Today's episode is brought to you by Sports Business Classroom. Landing a job in the NBA is no easy feat. One surefire way to put yourself in front of a competitive talent pool is if you master the collective bargaining agreement. And now you can, with a course developed by the godfather of the CBA himself, Larry Kuhn. Larry Kuhn has been teaching the CBA to teams, agents, media, and students for over 20 years, and now you can master the CBA through his online video on-demand course, which is now available to the public. If you're looking to break into basketball or even just set yourself apart, this is the competitive advantage you are looking for. To learn more about the video on-demand course that is being taken by teams and agents all over the world, please visit sportsbusinessclassroom.com today. Sahil, man, what's going on?
What's up, John? How you doing?
Doing great. Really excited to do this show. And right, we're doing this. You've been on my personal show before. We're kind of bringing you into this no trade clause show because you when it comes to the G League, there's no one that knows more about it than you do, whether it's with your page, whether it's with what you're doing. And I'm just going to mention this right off the bat because our guests might be wondering as we're going along, how old is this kid? Like, who is this guy? You're 17 years old, interning for the Windy City Bulls. I met you last year when you were a 16-year-old intern for the Windy City Bulls. That will always be cool to me. So really awesome having you on and kind of digging into all the stuff you're doing. But first off, right, one of the main things you do is this platform you've created for yourself with NBA G League Tracker. And that's kind of right. The G League's been growing so much, and that's a big portion of this show in terms of kind of what that looks like, how it's impacting the playoff structure, the NBA. Like a lot of these two-way guys are going to be playing in the NBA playoffs kind of soon, and having some real implications on team salary caps. What did making NBA G League Tracker look like for you at such a young age, kind of starting that and having that kind of be such a big part of what you're doing in this whole G League world?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a great way for me to get involved beyond just being a fan in the G League. Now with the G League season getting started, or before the G League season got started, when COVID was going on and everything, I was just kind of covering it, like just news posts, like somebody signed here, somebody got traded here, this person won this award, here's some stats from the game, some highlights. But now that we're in the G League season, it's allowed me to be able to do some interviews with a lot of these G League players, some coaches, and it's been a really good way for me to kind of connect more with the G League and like the people of the G League, and not just be so much of an outsider. I've been able to learn a lot more from what the players have to say, from kind of just being behind the scenes and being around the league more, and being able to cover it has been great because it gives more exposure to the guys who wouldn't usually get covered. Like if there's not a random guy, but somebody who's never played in the NBA before, who's on a G League team, they're usually not getting a post made about them anywhere else. So that's what I like to do. I like to really highlight those gems in the G League who really have a chance to do great things at the G League level, overseas, or possibly even in the NBA.
It's incredible that you're doing that right at such a young age, making this content and really showcasing guys that maybe ESPN and Bleacher Report aren't picking up, but you're giving them a platform to share their story and right, showing the amazing abilities they have on the basketball court, but you're kind of showing it to the casual fan maybe who only follows the NBA, but now they get to follow the G League through the content you're providing. So that's really cool. But I'm still, and this is the last time I'm going to do this because I know you get this all the time, but I'm going to hype on the fact that you are so young doing this. You also, right, you're not just making content for the G League, you're also making content for your high school, where you're a rising senior going into this summer. But with like the BHS Sports Show, you're kind of making content there and helping other students like yourself do the same thing. Like, what does that look like for you in further creating more content for yourself?
Yeah, so as a junior now, I've been able to pretty much kind of run all the sports segments, features, highlights that we've been doing for our school's broadcast television program. The first thing I do is I host the sports desk for our weekly TV show, BHS TV. And on that show, we're usually recapping what our teams have done recently, we're going over some upcoming matchups. We're taking a look at highlights, any big storylines, any people committing to go play in college. And along with that, I'm doing interviews with our basketball team, who I actually, on the boys side and the girls side, just made it to the state for the first time ever, for both teams, and both had pretty good runs. Actually, the boys placed third, and the girls were the runner up at the state tournament. So that was really cool to be able to cover, kind of just highlighting the sports of our whole school. I've also been making highlight videos for the boys basketball team. We won a huge super sectional game against the number 2 team in the state that allowed us to go to the state tournament. We weren't even ranked in the top 10. So creating that highlight video, incorporating, scenes from the crowd and noises from the crowd, and just some of the great plays from the game was really something that I enjoyed, besides just doing like interviews and hosting shows, but just really covering sports um, in every which way for our high school has been a really great experience. And it's actually what allowed me to start doing my own sports media stuff with the G League outside of school.
Love that. And I saw that video and all the content you're making about that. I thought that was super cool doing that at the high school level, being able to create that kind of content and showcase all of that. But you mentioned right how that's kind of helped you so much with what you're doing in the G League with the Windy City Bulls. So tell us about that internship and maybe what you're doing there. That's good. And that's got to be a lot of fun for you, kind of being able to actually work in the league that you're also covering.
Yeah. So in terms of how I started there, I really have to give all the credit back to my high school program, because that's where I first started working with video and media and editing. Um, and when COVID rolled around, I kind of had started my G League page a little bit beforehand. And when COVID rolled around, I was like, hey, maybe I should start like interviewing players with the skills I've learned from class, and maybe doing some more like better editing for my posts and stuff. So that's what really led me into doing my own G League page. And that G League page allowed me to get a digital media and PR internship with the Windy City Bulls. They saw what I was doing with that page and thought that digital media PR would be a good place for me to learn more about the business of basketball. And it's been a really good experience. After the summer, it's now turned in from an unpaid internship into a part-time job. So um, it's been really great to be able to cover the G League for my own stuff, but also be working for the Windy City Bulls, and basically my hometown team. And for them, I've been doing their game day social media. Now that I'm in school, since I can't make it on a regular basis, but doing game day social media, helping out with any player content on game days, and sometimes I'll help out whenever I have off days from school. But really helping with everything on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything that you see on game days on those social platforms is something I've contributed to in one way or another.
Oh, that is so cool. I did not know it went from an internship to a part-time job. That is something that is absolutely insane. When did that actually happen? Was that like start of the season, midway?
That happened at the end of the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I originally needed school credit to be able to do an internship there, since they couldn't have me without having school credit or paying me. So originally I got school credit for doing the internship, and then in order to keep me, they had to pay me, and they were really nice, and they uh, decided to keep me around for longer than I expected. I expected it to just be kind of a shorter internship and kind of finish off when the season ended, but they were really great and decided to keep me around and pay me for the work I'm doing now, which isn't, of course, the main focus. The main focus is being in the business of the G League and just being around it, and just learning so much about not even just digital media or social media, kind of just being around the team in total. I've learned about ticket sales, about business ops, merchandise, just being around everything and hearing different things from people in the office and just seeing what they do on a regular basis has given me a much greater insight into what's been happening, what happens in the business behind a professional basketball team.
That is so cool, thinking about the fact that you're able to take that experience and see all this stuff on the back end of it, and getting to see this Windy City Bulls season take place and be a part of it in such a real way. That is so cool. And I mean, right now, like the season's kind of drawing to a close. I mean, how had the season maybe gone for you, and maybe looking ahead to the playoff format? What is it looking for the G League as a whole in that sense?
Yeah, to start focusing a little bit with Windy City. Unfortunately, we didn't make playoffs this year, but I feel like it was just a bit of an up and down year for us. We had some winning streaks, we had some losing streaks, but the guys there were always. I feel like they got more close as the year went on. Beginning of the year, it looked a little bit clunky at the beginning of the year, but towards the end of the year now, you can really see they've banded together, become a really great team, both on the court and off the court. They've got some great guys on that team who are super nice to me, super nice to everybody else, and just super personable, great guys. So it's been really nice to be around the players all year long. It's just been really awesome to be in that role. But in terms of the rest of the G League, for the teams that did make the playoffs, I feel like the whole G League season has been a little bit messed up. We've had some COVID issues that have kind of affected teams' playoffs runs. We've had the 10-day contract bonanza at the end of December, beginning of January, where all these players are getting called up. And a lot of teams' playoff chances have been impacted by that. There's only 6 teams that make the playoffs in each conference. So it's a really tight spot to get into. And if we look at the playoff picture in general, I feel like this year the East has been really, really, really competitive. You've got right now Grand Rapids, Westchester, and Long Island vying for that last spot in the East. Grand Rapids and Westchester right now are both 17 and 14. Long Island's 18 and 15. They all have, or Grand Rapids and Westchester have games tomorrow. So we'll see how that shakes out and who ends up in that last spot. And interestingly enough, all the teams in the East have winning records who are in the playoffs. However, in the West this year, it's been a little bit more open. That last playoff spot is going to be a team with a losing record. And so there's a bunch of teams right now who are like 15 and 17 or 14 and 17 or 15 and 18 who are trying to get that last playoff spot as well. So it's been really competitive in the G League this year, vying for those playoff spots.
That is awesome. We were talking about this a little bit beforehand. Obviously COVID might kind of making everything kind of difficult, where not every team has maybe played each other even. Obviously the seating so messed up with like some teams having 33, 34 games, other teams having only 30. So we were talking about that a little before, and it is so wacky thinking about that. But it's going to be a fun little playoff bracket. We'll be watching the games, live streaming them, to kind of checking in on them. And obviously you interviewing a big part of the league, even me interviewing a big part of the league. We all have like a little bit of something in every single game, which is always really cool. But you've interviewed some really, really big names over the course of the season. And I mean, how did that all kind of take place? And who are some of the people that you really had a fun time sitting down with?
That's a tough one because I think this year I've done between 15 and 20 interviews total. It's got to be somewhere in there. I think some of the most fun interviews I've done this year, or probably the coolest one for me, was Isaiah Thomas. Meeting him, being able to interview somebody who has had so much success on an NBA level, 2-time All-Star, in the MVP conversation for a year or two. That was a really, really cool experience. And seeing how he knew he's an NBA player, but he was still super down to earth and humble about, just doing the interview, answering the questions, being really cool, not having like a ton of security around him or a ton of, he was just another guy in the G League at that point, even though the fans may not have seen it that way, but he was just like everybody else there trying to get back to the NBA. So that was really cool to kind of hear what he had to say. And I was able to interview him, I think, right before he got called up. I think like a week and a half before he got called up. So that was one of my most memorable interviews for the year. I think some other guys that I really enjoyed interviewing were Kerwin Roach, super nice guy. I have a good relationship with him. Got to connect with him in person towards the beginning of the season after interviewing him on Zoom last 2020. Another guy who was really great, Kenneth Farid, another NBA guy who was super personable, had really good answers, in-depth answers to my questions. One more guy who I would say, and a lot of people wouldn't understand why, but I think Eric Demers from the Maine Celtics, hearing his perspective on going from D3 to the pros, making that adjustment, was really interesting as well. So not just interviewing these NBA guys, but interviewing some of the lesser known guys of the G League has been really great to understand their perspectives and their goals for the rest of the season, their careers, and just really everything about what they have going on right now.
Oh, definitely. And that is such a cool thing to think about, right? Kind of having that interaction with all these people that, right, like guys like Isaiah Thomas that you watch as a kid, right, on TV when he was vying for that, for like kind of even in the MVP conversation that 1 year in 2017. So just thinking about the fact that you're able to talk to these guys, build a relationship, and now you're getting to see them play, right, in a week or two in the playoffs is going to be really fun, and right, it's a really pretty cool investment to have, seeing that on TV. So that's all really cool thing about the star power, all these big names in the G League. But we were talking about this a little bit before we got on there, how some teams maybe don't have that same star power, and they might be at the top of the standings, but a lot of us as G League fans are focusing on the big names that are on these teams that maybe either played in the NBA before or have relatives that do, or whatever it might be. Like, have you maybe seen that, and what teams do you think we really should be paying attention to that maybe don't have that?
Yeah, in terms of the playoff picture, I think looking at the East first, and really kind of focusing on the East right now, because those are the teams that I've been able to see play in person. because the G League has switched up their format a little bit this year, where only East teams are playing East teams. I would say the College Park Skyhawks are a real threat to look out for right now. They're on a 10-game winning streak. I was able to interview Cat Barber, who's their star point guard, after they extended their win streak to 8 games last Sunday. And what he said about their win streak is that beforehand they were playing a little bit more selfishly, like they didn't have that cohesiveness as a team, but working on that, building up that chemistry a little bit more, and just coming with an energy that they knew they needed to win in order to make the playoffs. Like they needed those games. Like if they weren't on a 10-game win streak, they wouldn't really have a spot in the playoffs. Him talking about how they really banded together over that was very evident in how they played when I was able to see them play in person. And I think it's something that anybody can see watching them. They're a real threat right now. And I think it's mostly due to Barber's play. I'd have to say everybody values him as a scorer, but as a distributor and a facilitator, he's fantastic in that role as well. And him being able to mesh with a young talent in Sharif Cooper is a dangerous combo for College Park. So really looking out for them. Another guy on their team, Justin Tillman, he's a walking double-double every night. So they're going to be a scary team to look out for, especially with the momentum they're riding right now. I think they clinched the 5th spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs today, actually. So they're going to be a scary team, no matter if it's the 6th seed playing them at some point or it's the number 1 seed playing them. So definitely watch out for them. I think another team to watch, they're kind of at the back of the playoff picture right now. They're fighting for that last spot with Long Island and Westchester, but the Grand Rapids Gold, they've had a really interesting year. They're coached by Jason Terry. They've had a lot of NBA talent on the team. Nick Stauskas, who's now with the Celtics, Davon Reed, who's on a 2-way deal. They've had Isaiah Thomas. I think they had Mario Chalmers for 2 games, who's now with Sioux Falls. They've had a lot of NBA talent, Kenneth Fareed. But seeing now what they can do to kind of secure that last spot, if they're able to secure it in their game tomorrow, that'll be really interesting because they've lost some of that NBA talent. They're still going to be a solid squad, but seeing if they can secure that spot and make any sort of run in the playoffs will be interesting. And then looking at the West, I think the Memphis Hustle are a team that people need to watch out for. They're not in the top 6 right now, but they're still haven't been eliminated from the playoffs. We got one more day. Depending on how it shakes out, they could make it. But Ahmad Kaver, Shaq Buchanan on that team, dynamic duo. They've been playing really, really well this year. They've both gotten NBA call-ups. They're 2 guys that I feel like need to be focused on more. I mean, they're getting some attention now, but I feel like those are guys you could see in the league consistently in the next 2 to 3 years. So I think Memphis is a team to watch out for if they can make that playoff, if they can make that last playoff spot.
That was incredible, thinking about just how, number one, how deep this playoff field is. I mean, we're going to see some really good basketball here in this G League playoff season. I know we'll both be tuning in. I encourage a lot of our listeners to do it too, because a lot of these guys might be in NBA rosters pretty soon. And some of them, right, have been all season. A lot of these 2-way guys. And we're talking before we got on about, right, some of these guys that have been going back and forth. Like you mentioned Nick Stauskas. He had however many threes and points in that one G League game and got called up right away. And right, the Celtics have been on a huge tear lately. Like there's a lot of these guys that are in the G League are going to really be making a big impact on some of these teams very soon, impacting salary caps all around the league and stuff like that. So who are some of those 2-way guys that maybe really piqued your interest as the season kind of really started progressing?
So I have a few. I'd start off with Matt Ryan. He was somebody that I got to see play in person at the beginning of the year. And him being a shooter, somebody that you can count on to consistently knock down the 3 was something that I was super impressed with. Quick shot, just seemed like a well-rounded player too, not just a shooter, but somebody you could always rely on, somebody that was consistent. I was surprised to not see him on a 2-way deal earlier, but a few weeks ago, he signed a 2-way deal with the Celtics. So seeing him get that NBA opportunity has been really great. And somebody I think that the league is he's going to be in the league for multiple years because they're always looking for 3-point shooters. And that's something that he specializes in. And he can do much more than that. I think him showing that he can do more than that is going to keep him in the league for a long time. Somebody else that I like to look at is Malcolm Hill from the Bulls. He was originally with Birmingham in the G League, and I believe he ended up signing 2 10-day contracts with the Chicago Bulls during that whole COVID, during all their COVID issues. And he impressed them enough to sign a 2-way deal with them. His defensive play, being able to stop or get a stop whenever it's needed, but also produce on the offensive end, making him a super valuable 2-way player, playing both in the NBA and the G League and on the offensive and defensive ends, has been something that I've been really impressed with. So I think the Bulls found a gem in him. And I think something that people have to realize with this year, with the 2-way contracts, is even though a player may sign them, it's an NBA contract. Technically, it's a non-guaranteed contract. So these guys are constantly still fighting to hold their spots. Like, none of them are secure in their spots, and we've seen that a lot this year with 2-way contract movement. When Malcolm Hill signed, they cut the Bulls cut Devon Dotson, who's now back in the G League trying to make it to another NBA contract. And we've seen that with multiple teams. So I think these guys are going to stay hungry who are on 2-way deals. And they're going to keep playing at a high level because they're so hungry to get that full NBA contract.
This is so fun thinking about it and knowing that, right, so much of this movement's going to keep on taking place. Like, this year was historic, obviously, all the numbers of call-ups, and obviously a lot of circumstances that caused that. But the fact that that precedent has been set for, okay, like, call-ups are becoming such a normal thing. The G League's going to be monumentally more important going forward than it has been in years past. And I am so ready for that. I know you are too. And I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing all this G League information with us, because a lot of times we focus kind of too much on the NBA and don't realize so many of these NBA teams that we're talking about are really fueled by the G League programs behind them. So thank you, Sal, for coming on the show and sharing this with us, because this is so helpful in us kind of figuring out what this end of the NBA season will be like.
Of course, John. Thank you so much for having me on.